Video games have been around for years, almost since the creation of the computer. With that, people began building up video game companies, producing games with increasing quality and creativity, and catching gamers' attention. But not all companies do well, bringing up the topic of which video game producers are the best and why, such as Nintendo and Capcom, or the worst and why, like Electronic Arts and Ubisoft. The reasons for a company to be considered good or bad include workplace conditions and the innovation, creativity, and the quality of the games they produce. International Game Developers Association published a survey on developer satisfaction in 2024. Although it doesn't say which producers these developers work for, it gives an overall look to how they feel on topics of equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts, employment, and crunch. 80 to 90% of developers felt diversity was important in the workplace, in game content, and in the game industry. When it comes to employment and crunch reports, layoffs forced 10,500 game makers to lose their jobs in 2023. 60 to 75% of those who experienced crunch included employees, freelancers, and the self-employed, who had to work overtime to complete deadlines more than twice in the past 2 years. Returning to layoffs, one of the recent reasons for these layoffs was the COVID-19 pandemic. The big surge in spending during the pandemic effectively tricked a lot of companies into overspending, overhiring, overestimating. Then, when game revenues leveled back out in 2022 or so as gamers left the house again, cuts had to be made. But even as companies continued to use this excuse, Riot Games admitted that the causes for these layoffs started long before the pandemic. Since 2019, bets had been placed down to make the company better for the player. Riot Games had quickly expanded as they broadened their portfolio, created new experiences, bringing in new talent to accommodate. But now, because of these choices, they've left themselves with no room for experimentation or failures, which is what allows them to be creative. This is a problem also affecting other companies. Executives are choosing how to spend their money, forcing rank-and-file developers to pay the price. Companies couldn't keep up with the choices they made, forcing them to condense. But they still spend money on unnecessary needs, causing games that could have done well to do poorly. Metacritic is a site that combines critic scores for video game companies every year, giving an average score for each company and what their best game was that year. These scores are not based on popularity or sales, but on quality and consistency. In 2023, Perpetual Games was considered one of the worst producers alongside Nacon/Daedalic, Microids, and Bandai Namco within the last 3 years. Their rankings suggest poor quality in their games, rushed releases, and not catching or keeping anyone's attention. Though they have risen a little bit in ranking, they are still in the bottom 10 of Metacritic's scoring system. On the other hand, gaming companies in the top 10 for the past 3 years include Capcom, Nintendo, Raw Fury, Square Enix, and Sega. Producers like Sega and Thunderful, despite moving up and down in ranks, showed they can be consistent in their game design and quality, with Sega's best game in 2023 being Persona 4 Golden and Sonic Racing Crossworlds in 2025. Thunderful's best games in those years were Worldless and Islanders New Shores. Nintendo and Capcom have also been successful video game companies. Capcom held first place in 2023 with the Resident Evil 4 remake, second place in 2024 with Dragon's Dogma 2, third place in 2025 with Monster Hunter Wilds, and a great start this year with Resident Evil Requiem. Another piece between Nintendo and Capcom. Nintendo's recent release of the Nintendo Switch 2 was a usual hit, but gamers only began to see its abilities once Capcom released Requiem, boosting both companies. This is another example of great game producers within the past 10 years. And returning back to Sega, as you can see, Sega has been the first for 3 years, along with Capcom again in 2019 and 2024. In conclusion, the video games we play are about more than entertainment. It's a reflection of the people and workplaces who create them. Companies who treat their employees well and spend money accordingly release great games that will be remembered for years, while companies who bet and lose on NFTs and lay off workers produce forgettable games. A great video game experience usually comes from a great workplace.